Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Success Sadhana. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a program today where we'll discuss Make Hay While the Sun Shines. Your speaker, Vaish, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk. We're close to 20 members on Zoom and 20 members on Facebook as well. Good afternoon, Vaish. Welcome from the new location on Success Sadhana.
Thank you very much, JM, for your warm welcome. And thanks, everybody, for joining from various places around the world. It's really great to be back together again. And we're continuing on our idiom trail because there's a 1/4 of the knowledge compartmentalization that's given in Bhakti Yoga has to do with what's called Aitya. Aitya means traditional wisdom that's encapsulated in pithy statements or stories that gets passed down from generations. It's just common wisdom or common sense to help guide us. It seems to be very helpful. Only the problem is when it becomes cliche, worn out, used so many times that my ear doesn't hear it anymore, that I forget its meaning. And therefore, we're doing CPR on these idioms to bring them back to life and to indicate what their deeper meaning might be. So today, Make Hay While the Sun Shines is something that can be revived and looked at really carefully. At least we'll give it a shot today in the next few minutes that we have together. Does that sound okay, everybody? All right. Then let's start today by just taking a moment to go into an introspective state. So try sitting up a little straighter than you were a second ago, just a tad. And you'll notice that your mind comes to attention when you sit up. And then try closing your eyes and bringing your attention to your breath. Any of the tension that you may have felt from this morning, just let it go out with your breath. And stay erect, but relax. Keep an alert mind and focus all your attention for now on your breath. And to help, you can bring in the element of gratitude. When I'm breathing well, I oftentimes don't even notice it or appreciate it. I take it for granted. However, if there's a pause in my breathing for any reason, congestion, or I swallowed something down the wrong tube, and I feel like it's hard to get my oxygen, then I might think it's about how valuable it is. So try to put yourself in that state and appreciate that you have it right now and it's sustaining you. And now become aware of your position as the witness within the body. As you're sitting, notice that you're the noticer. You're the one able to objectify your breathing, to analyze it. The breathing isn't you, nor is the apparatus that allows it. And become aware of your torso and notice that there are multiple organs that are held within this container we call the body. And if you do a quick inventory, you'll notice that none of them are you either. If you see one of those organs, you'll be able to objectify that also and say, that's not me. That's part of my body. And notice also that we don't say I body, we say my body, just in the same way we'd say my car, my house, my country, my planet, my universe, but none of these are my permanent dwelling place. I'm only passing through. The ancient wisdom literatures say, Brahmanda Brahmate Kon Bhagyavan Jeev. Jeev means the living force. You're just passing through here. In fact, you've been wandering for a long time in this material environment, trying to find something nice. But so far, nobody's found anything nice in the material world. And now just become aware of time. See if you can conceptualize it in your mind. How do you think of time? What influence does it have on you? And then think for a moment, how much time do I have? That is, how long will I stay in this particular body? It has a beginning and an end. We don't get to stay in this body. And there will be a point in which we have to exit. So just note that. And relish being aloof from your body and your mind. And let your breathing go on automatically. And notice that your body's going on automatically, and so is the universe. No coins are necessary to operate the body or the world. You're aloof. You're the witness. Now transfer your attention back to your breath. And then rub your palms together to create some friction and external sensation. Open your eyes and come back into the room. And now we're going to show a few slides. And this is a verse that comes from an ancient wisdom literature that was spoken at an assembly 5,000 years ago, Naimisaranya. It's a place in India. Sages had gathered there to hear from a great personality named Sutta. And Sutta was teaching all the sages who were present there the process of bhakti yoga. He said, the human body, which can award all benefit in life, is automatically obtained by the laws of nature. Although it is a very rare achievement, this human body can be compared to a perfectly constructed boat, having the spiritual master as the captain and the instructions of the Supreme as favorable winds and impelling it on its course. Considering all these advantages, a human being who does not utilize his human life to cross the ocean of material existence must be considered the killer of his own spiritual self. So this is the famous analogy, is that Nri Deham Adyam Sulabham Sadulabham. In the Sanskrit, it says the rarity of getting a human body is sometimes compared to the rarity of a board that's floating in the ocean, and it has a knothole in the middle, and a tortoise swimming in the ocean comes up, and it just happens that he's able to stick his head through the knothole by chance. So human life is very rare like that. It's called sadulabham. And the body is also compared in this analogy to a boat. It's specifically for a mission. We're meant to go somewhere in this body, not just get comfortable here. It's not a destination where we are now, but we have a destination. And you can get there by having a good captain and also having good instructions. And those are the instructions are compared to favorable breezes. So then it finishes with this admonition almost that don't waste it, because it's so rare, it's so valuable. Although it's temporary, you can turn it into something that lasts forever if you apply yourself. That's the mood of this verse. So how much time do we have? The worldwide average, well, let's say California. I looked at the worldwide, I think it's around 82. Average life expectancy in California is 80.8. So you can subtract any of the years you've already put on this body, any of the miles you've already put on, and then see how much you have left. But then there was a great teacher called Prahlad. He's actually a young boy. Part of the potency of his teaching was that he was very young, but he took spiritual practice very seriously. And he was pointing out to some of his classmates, I think they couldn't have been more than in kindergarten. And he was saying, look, don't think just because you're young, you can waste the rest of your life or become whimsical. And then he said, you don't actually get as much time as you think. It's just like with income. You say, this is how much I make. I make 100,000. Well, no, you don't. You have to take out all the taxes. And then you got to pay for basic maintenance and so forth. What's left over? It's not how much you make. It's how much you're able to keep that counts in financial planning. And so there's a way that in life, it's not how much you get, it's how much you're able to utilize properly. So there are ways that Prahlad said that we waste our time. Part of it is in sleep. He didn't consider sleep to be, of course, it's important to maintain the body, but there's a way in which I get accustomed to sleeping as one of my main objectives in life, try to get comfortable in my sleep. But he points out that you're not able to practice spiritually when you're sleeping. So he takes off 27 years. 27 years, because that's considering sleeping 8 hours a day. So you can just take that off the top, just like you take off your state taxes if you're self-employed. And then childhood. Childhood, generally, I mean, the first 3 to 4 years, there's a lot of learning to talk, learning to crawl, pulling things off the shelf. Up till 10, it's hard. The frontal lobes of the brain actually haven't even developed until you're in your 20s, early 20s. They don't have normally that much serious practice in childhood. So he said, take off 10 years there, 10 years in adolescence when you're overcome by hormones. And then, of course, in old age, there's this arc, and then we start coming down. And in old age, if you haven't practiced, it becomes a full-time job just taking care of your body, make sure that parts don't fall off, because the warranty runs out on all the parts. And you have to spend so much time in old age distracted. Oftentimes people in old age, they don't know what to do. They just go play golf, fish, something like that. They don't have any momentum, any yoga balena, spiritual strength from practice in their earlier days. So according to this very conservative calculation, if you live 80 years total, you get about 13.8 years for spiritual practice. Let's see the next slide. We'll try to up the ante a little bit. What if you watch TV every day for 1 hour? Just 1 hour, then your opportunity for spiritual practice is reduced by another 3.36 years. This is like financial planning, isn't it? You're going to buy a latte every day. That means in 20 years, you're going to lose about $1 million in compounded interest. So if one watches TV every day for 1 hour, then one's opportunity for spiritual practice is reduced by 3.36 years. Oftentimes people say near the end of their life, I wish I had another 3 years. Well, you can get it. Take it now. Take it now. What about social media? And 1 hour is conservative. there are some estimates I read where people spend 7 hours watching television. That's probably the upper limit. And what about other time wasters? Somebody, let's come back in and see if there's any other time wasters besides TV and social media. Anything? Of course, I'm not saying there's no recreation in spiritual practice, but I'm talking about blatant time wasting. What do you think?
Worry.
That's a good way. I like that. Worry. Yeah. Worrying about things you can't control is a time waster. Thank you very much. That's good. And Linda said ruminating thoughts. Wow. You have some deep ideas here. Rajesh.
We are talking more about the much bigger problem, which you have no control actually. So we are trying to solve the problem which is out of your control, and you are so much wasting time talking about it.
Okay. Right. So the worry translates into talking, and then it gets into a downward spiral. And Wolf said working. So overthinking, working, chatting.
Drama.
What is it?
Drama, emotions, like extra emotions when you don't understand, just waste,
Yeah. You said like drama, D-R-A-M-A.
Drama, yes. Drama, like
drama.
emotions, like you make things probably bigger than they are, or that sort of thing.
Yeah. And Barbara said it's not time waster, but working and managing a house and children takes a lot of my time. Yeah, that's why Prahlad counted out some big categories we're used to. They're not blatant time wasters, as you're saying, Barbara, but there's a way in which we do have to put a lot of time into things. We may eke out a couple minutes here or there in those cases for our spiritual practice. Rehearsing hypothetical arguments. Go ahead, JM, you can read some.
Yeah, I think Anna says criticizing others, getting into others' business.
Yeah.
Sanigam says dwelling on the past.
Yeah.
Bruce says commuting. Wolf comes back and says, it looks like a perfect design with time box budgeting.
Time box budgeting, yeah.
Mayank says meetings.
Meetings, yeah. Sometimes, yeah, there can be too many meetings. Reading news on the internet, thinking about what it is. What about games? Video games?
Yeah, that was the first one Tony said.
Okay. People get addicted to those. Anything else, JM?
Yeah, Josh said worrying about things you cannot control is a time waster. I think it's
So if we made a list of items that we might have in our lives, we could trim a little bit. Just like when you meet with a financial planner and then you go over it and it's like, oh yeah, I didn't realize I was spending an extra $3,000 a month on buying a cup of this or that. So you can do an audit and take a look. That's why Prahlad is showing us this tracking cricket match scores. Okay, yes. All kinds of sports. People get fully absorbed in. They're not really related to spiritual practice. Okay, podcasts. Yeah. So, yeah, we have to analyze and see what it is. So you can make a chart like this. Let's go back and see the net result here is, if you go back one slide, if you chart it up, you'll start to see, if you consider how much time you're likely to have according to the actuary charts, and then you take out the parts that naturally you need to take out anyway, and then look and see how many time wasters are, you might reduce that 13.3 down to maybe, it could even be half of that. So you can see how precious the time that we have is. And considering what the wisdom literature say of what a rare opportunity the human life is, you find the sages try to maximize their spiritual practice time and minimize other things that aren't so important. We have to live a balanced life and be healthy. mentally, physically, socially, but don't get out of balance and waste a bunch of time, because you can't get it back. This is something Chanakya Pandit said. If you waste one moment, 1 second, you can't get it back, even with millions of gold coins. It's the most valuable asset we have, time. So rare. Okay, what else do we have here? So 3 practices that are the mainstay of yoga. First one's called Shravanam, or hearing. The hearing process is charted here on the right-hand side. There are vibrations that are generated by the striking of 2 objects. Like I'm speaking now, my vocal cords are making some kind of a frictional noise, and it's coming through the airwaves, somehow being transferred electronically and coming to your ears. And I'm representing what I've heard through the wisdom literatures and various teachers and my own practice, and therefore there's some kind of transmission through this sound. There's also internal sound. It's called unstruck sound. And each one of the chakras in our bodies has a particular vibration that it resonates with. And so when we hear spiritual sound vibration, that is topics related to the ultimate goal of life, and they connect us to our original conscious divine source, then those vibrations purify. They purify the seat of our consciousness. And this is mentioned by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his main teachings. He was a great teacher of Bhakti 500 years ago, and he said these famous words, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. And he was talking about the process of Bhakti Yoga, especially hearing. And then what I'm going to talk about in a minute is speaking or chanting. These 2 things purify the Cheta, or the consciousness. So the first hearing means to hear from transcendental wisdom literatures. I was just talking with a friend of mine today who has a very well-attended podcast, and he reads basically just directly from various wisdom literatures, especially one called Srimad Bhagavatam. And thousands of people join. And he said that he's got an overwhelming response over the last few years from people talking about how just listening on a regular basis has transformed their consciousness and has allowed them to do things that they didn't think they could do before, because they gained spiritual strength. So the Shravanam, and it's basically what we've been doing here on this forum, for several years, is in a kind of a, digested way, presenting the basic thoughts of the wisdom literatures. And just by hearing, listening in an assembly, then the wheels start to turn. There's actually a spiritual process, an internal processing that takes place by hearing. So it's called Shravanam. And there's a great emphasis on this for the bhakti yogis to learn to hear. And so there's different ways that you can hear. And if you start your day, especially by hearing or reading from transcendental knowledge, or hearing somebody speak it, then you prepare yourself to meet the day in appropriate ways. You don't get overwhelmed by the various awkward situations of this world that are inevitable every single day. So then from Shravanam, or hearing, then there's chanting or speaking. So you see on the left, actually, the woman on the right-hand side, she's singing a mantra. Actually, she has headset on and there's a speaker somewhere. And she'll be singing a mantra, and the others that are sitting in a circle, you can't see the rest of them, will be repeating the mantra that she says. And generally this is done to music and some rhythm. It's an age-old process. And this is called Samkirtan. Sam means together, and Kirtan means to chant or to speak. And so when you have this process, especially chanting a mantra, then this process is also Shravanam and then Kirtanam. You're hearing somebody else say it, and then you hear it, then you repeat it. So it goes back and forth from Shravanam to Kirtanam. And this is what perpetuates the purification process that takes place within the consciousness. Then the other one on the right, talking. For instance, we have this program where we talk. Mostly I talk, but sometimes if I'm really fortunate, you talk too. And we discuss things. And this is a kind of kirtan also. As I just mentioned previously, but I'll reiterate this, being in a circle of trusted people, you get to trust each other after a while, think, God, this person doesn't have any motive. They're actually, trying to impart something that seems valuable. I'll check it out. And, when one's mind opens to that prospect and then the sound vibration goes in, you start to notice by the discussion, there's a kind of purification of heart and a strengthening of one's resolve. I live here in Burlingame for quite a few years, over a decade. I used to have a program at my house once a week. I just invite people to come, and we'd have these kinds of discussions and then chanting. And of course, my wife cooked. That really helped a lot. And I saw that the group really became tight, very tight, as they came to their own realizations from that process of hearing and chanting, discussing together, solving problems with a spiritual perspective, and hearing other people what their problems are and discussing with them became a real community. In fact, it expanded into a larger community, just from the nucleus of that. And I find that anywhere in the world that I've gone where we'd started a small hearing and chanting session, of course, nowadays it's been online quite a bit, but we're finding it there too. Communities, we're developing communities online. I have other colleagues who are doing the same thing. And it happens just by this kind of discussion. We haven't had a lot of chanting together because there are some technological boundaries, but we haven't gone there yet. We probably should soon. But there are ways to do the chanting more in a more robust way online. And if you're all into it, we can try it at some time. So I think we had a few shows like that a year ago or so. We had my friend Hovey, the double Grammy winning musician, come on here and play some things. But anyway, that's Shravanam and Kirtanam. Sounds elusively simple. Does that work in English? It's elusively simple. Okay, let me put it like this. It's elusively simple sounding, hyphenated. And however, it's highly effective. It's a purifying process, hearing and chanting. So if you want to stimulate your spiritual practice, then you could form your own group, or you can join a small group, wherever it might be, even if it's 2 people. In fact, the program I had at my house just started with one other person who showed up on a motorcycle. And then, it was an old friend. We'd have discussion and some chanting, and then more people heard about it and came, and then it grew and grew and grew. But it always expands, because that's one of the principles of the spiritual sound vibration. It always expands and becomes more, it becomes sweeter, and it also becomes more inclusive. It brings more people in. So before I go to the next part of the discussion, which is what is the result of hearing and chanting, according to the ancient wisdom literatures. I'd love to hear any comments that you have. And you can light up the chat box. Oh, Gidget's here. Gidget said, when I was younger, I only slept 6 hours because I only wanted to spend 1/4 of my life sleeping instead of 1/3. I've learned that I need 8 hours. Yeah, I resonate with that completely. And you know, something about sleep, I'll mention it. My teacher told me many years ago, he said that if your practice when you're awake is intense enough, then it'll carry over into your sleep as well. And he gave me this example. He said, in the town he grew up in, Calcutta, he knew a merchant who was very dedicated to his work. He was selling cloth. And all day long, he was wholesaling. He was quoting prices, quoting. So my teacher was young at the time, and he saw when this person would go to sleep or take a nap in the daytime, you know, they take a siesta to break up the day. He said he noticed him curled up there, and still in his sleep, he was quoting prices. So he gave this example: if you're chanting, and hearing when you're awake, then when you go to sleep, then it carries over into that also. What else, JM?
Tony just shared, I've been trying to chant in my dreams, but it is very difficult, nearly impossible.
Yeah, we don't have so much control in our sleep of where we go. We're sort of letting go. And that's why Prahlad didn't consider it so highly. You can get momentum, as I just said. But what to speak of when, you know, we're asked to leave the body, it can be quite unceremonious, usually is. Like, hey, guess what? You got 3 months. Are you kidding me? No, not kidding. It's serious. Then, you know, even when we're in the throes, when we have to leave the body, unless we're prepared, unless we have some kind of spiritual strength, it's an onerous situation, to say the least, having to vacate all of a sudden and leave by everything that I thought I had and so forth. It's quite bewildering. So we'll go into that more in just a second. Jam, I'm breathing. Could you read a couple more?
Yeah. Angela just shared, do you or there is any have any YouTube with chanting we could hear while sleeping?
Yeah, I mean, I got all kinds of chanting recordings. I've found that it doesn't work for me that well while I'm sleeping, because I need it to be really quiet so I can get a deep sleep. But there are, my plants like it. In my greenhouse, I keep chanting going 24/7. They seem to thrive on it. But yeah, if you contact us, we can send you a YouTube that has some chanting on it. Definitely, Angela.
I'm just sharing the email ID. Please send an email and we'll send you some links. Linda says, I joined Jay Shetty's Genius Group, author of Think Like a Monk. This past year, we had our first meetup in Indianapolis about a month ago. There are 4 of us so far, and we all come from different background, age, race, upbringing. But it is like I have known them all my life, and we are so close in such a short time because we have the shared goal to make our lives better with Jai's wisdom.
Yeah, that's called a Sangha. And when you have some guidance, you know, Jay spent years as a monk, and then, you know, he's definitely studied the wisdom literatures and been very dedicated, and also is really good at organizing. So there's a way in which, you know, if you get into a Sangha like that, it can give you a real support and you'll make spiritual advancement. So that's a good example. Thank you, Linda.
Subhadra says, or buy a chanting recording and put it on repeat. Uses less battery than YouTube.
Yeah, or buy a chanting recording and put it on repeat. Well, what kind of device are you talking about using?
Well, I use my phone at night.
Oh, phone. Okay. All right. And you keep it going at night?
Yeah, I actually keep recordings of the wisdom literature on my phone.
I see.
Link. and I listen to that. It doesn't bother me. I actually sleep and I wake up really well.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. What else? Of course, I'm not asking a specific question, but it looks like that some of you are writing in the chat box anyway. Go ahead.
Yeah, SG says, I get the mantras coming back when I wake up from sleep in the middle of the night. I listen to them when prepare dinner in the evening.
Oh, that's good. And if you can't tolerate any ongoing sound vibration when you're sleeping, it is nice to have it loaded up so that as soon as you wake up, you turn it on so the mind doesn't go to something frivolous. If you can start your morning, it's like, in a good way, it's like starting a race, especially short races are. It's vital to get out of the blocks fast. So it's very helpful to line it up ahead of time.
Nirali says, if I have done chanting or singing of any kind in a daytime, then notice my mind is still singing happily.
Oh yeah, I can relate to that. You know, we have chanting sessions, singing. I have, several groups that I chant with, and then, some of them are in the evening. And I just really feel happy afterwards. And I feel happy the next day. I was at a festival in Golden Gate Park and led the chanting for several hours. And then that night, and the next morning, I just felt like I was floating. It's very energizing. Okay, let's go into the next phase because time is moving on. Our allotted 80.8 years are rushing by us right now. The next is Smaranam. There's 9 altogether, but I in the process of Bhakti Yoga, but I'm mentioning the first 3 right now. So first one is called Shravanam, and that means hearing. The next one is called Kirtanam. That means what you chant and what you say. And of course, those 2 are interrelated because you're going to hear what you say yourself also. But those lead to what's called Smaranam. Smaranam means remembering. It's a natural effect of hearing. If you hear news that's disturbing, you may notice if you hear it at night, you can't sleep, and the next day it's going through your mind. If you hear transcendental sound vibration, that's what's going to be in your mind. And that, according to the wisdom literatures, is the way to develop yourself, is to fill up that container that you have with transcendental sound rather than frivolous sound or sound that is disturbing. Not to say that we can't hear and we have to block out everything, but it's just like when you have a health regimen, you're very deliberate about what diet you have. If you eat snack foods all day long, junk snack foods, and you eat too much or whatever, then you're going to be unhealthy. It's just fact. It's practically mathematical. So in a similar way, the way we hear and then what we speak and chant, which has been a common theme in this program for the last few years, that's going to be what we remember. And so let's talk a little bit about why remembering is so important. It goes into the next few slides from the Bhagavad Gita. This is from the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is called Attaining the Supreme. First of all, this slide mentions Sankirtan. Sam means together and Kirtan means chanting. So on the left-hand side, you see somebody doing japa, which we've done here before. It's the individual practice of chanting. It's like you sit to do meditation and you can sit and do your chanting. He's that person on the left holding a string of chanting beads. It has 108 beads on it. And you say a mantra on each one, and then you advance to the next bead, successively going through 108. You come to the end of the string and you turn around and go the other way. That's called one round. And so if you sit and chant, you do one round, you'll find yourself getting absorbed in the sound vibration. And there's a lot of powerful revelation and purification that takes place from that. And then on the right-hand side, you see a few people doing what's called Samkirtan. So the young man on the left-hand side is playing a harmonium. That's a European instrument. It's became popular in India and all over the world, actually. Now it looks like a piano. It's a kind of accordion that you don't go to jail for. And then there's, in the middle, the young woman is playing a kol or a madanga, which is an ancient instrument. It's kind of like a tabla, only it's in one piece. And then on the closest to us is likely playing, she is playing kartals, which are made out of bell metal, and they make a sweet rhythm. You can make a sweet rhythmic sound with them, ching, 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 like that. And so together, like one of them is singing and the others are listening, and then one sings, the others repeat. So this is Samkirtan doing together. And that is mentioned in the wisdom literatures as called the Yuga Dharma. You've heard the word dharma before, the thing that aligns you with the laws of the universe. And yuga means in a specific time frame. So the Yuga Dharma, the prescribed method for becoming perfectly harmonious with our higher spiritual self, is Samkirtan. It's mentioned in some of the oldest Sankirtan, in some of the oldest Sanskrit literatures, that in this particular age of what's called Kali, the Sankirtan process is the best kind of meditation. So why is remembering so important? Okay, hearing directly from the wisdom literature Bhagavad Gita, I'm going to read a few verses and then we'll discuss if you wish. So first, the living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. Thus, he or she takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So that means the prevalent mindset that we have when we leave this body carries us to the next body. There's an accommodation that we get according to our strong desires that we've developed through an aggregate of impressions that we have. Next, the living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He or she thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. So notice that you have a tongue, you have an eye, you have sense of touch, right? Please say yes. Okay, these are accommodations carried over because of the aggregated desires we have from our last life. Material nature has given us this particular body. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his or her body, nor can they understand what sort of body he or she enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. So what we're doing right now is acquainting ourselves with the process so that we can see what's happening. And finally, I think there's one more in this series. The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly, but those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try to. So, Shravanam Kirtanam, and then Vishnu Smaranam, which means that if you hear and chant of the transcendental vibrations, then you're able to remember the Supreme in your mind. And if you're remembering that when you leave your body, then you attain the Supreme destination. So start a daily investment in the three spiritual practices: hearing, chanting, and the natural result will be remembering. Okay? So now let's see what kind of reflections you have from that, hopefully helpful information from the wisdom literatures. What reactions do you have to hearing any of that? What do you think? Or questions, if you want to say, hey, wait a minute, what about this? That'll expand the conversation.
What about humming?
Humming, eh? Well, if you're humming and remembering or articulating in your mind the mantra, that could be done, because sometimes the mantra is done silently, but generally mantra means to articulate the particular syllables in the mantra itself so that you can hear them, because it's a formula that has a specific effect.
I see. Okay. Thank you. I think because I've been trying sort of a grounding practice with just humming, but I haven't looked into the mantras.
Well, if you like to hum, one of the mantras that's almost like humming is Om. It's a single syllable mantra, and it's a mantra that's been passed down since the beginning of the wisdom literatures. And you've probably heard it before, but it goes like this. Om.
Yep. I mean, that's pretty much similar to the humming I've been doing. So I guess it's Om. I've been doing that.
If you just add it's spelled normally O-M, it's actually A-U-M, but because of the Sandhi rules in Sanskrit, the way that you blend syllables together, it comes out as O-M. But if you just add that, you're chanting a mantra that is the original mantra, actually, that consolidates all the spiritual energy. So you can have your vegan cake and eat it too.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay.
A question from Nirali, he's asking, I'm not finalizing which mantra is best to chant or my favorite, hard to remember or make any of it favorite.
How to, or you said hard to?
Hard to remember, hard.
Hard to do, okay. Yeah. Well, oftentimes when you get a sangha or a group, they're following a specific tradition, and mantras are like prescriptions oftentimes, so he's like, which mantra should I chant? It's like, what disease do you have? It's kind of like when you go to the doctor, it's like, should I take any medicine or just, he's like, no, right now take this. And so there is a sense in the chanting of mantra that it's called ashaudi. It's kind of medicine. What is my problem? What is my disease? Well, my mind's out of control. How to control it? Mantra. Mantra means how to control the mind. And what's the best mantra? Like, there are spiritual doctors. They'll pass it down and say, this is what we prescribe at this particular time. So there's an ancient writing it's called the Upanishad. And in it describes various mantras, but points out that in Kali Yuga, this present age, there's a specific mantra that's very helpful. So you can ascertain in those ways. And sometimes favorite mantras become favorite because you find a favorite person, who you see the qualities in, and they say, well, what medicine are you taking? How did you get like that? It's like, this is what I take. It's like, okay, I'll try that. Then that becomes a favorite mantra. But it's a good question. I'm glad you asked it, Nirali. Thank you.
There's a question on Facebook by Nidhi. Does everything have to be done in concentration, or can it be done with something else? For example, hearing or chanting while doing chores?
Well, the suggestion is to try to do as much as possible. So even as you're doing chores, you can keep the transcendental vibration going remember the saying we have at the end of all our programs, Hari Bol, which really means, keep it going, keep that transcendental vibration going. So yeah, when you're washing the floor or doing this or that, you can be singing or saying your mantra and keep it going. Because when you do, then it brings your mind back to the present, and you can actually be absorbed in thinking like, I'm doing this work for service. And you're looking at the world in a completely different way, focusing the mind. So yes, we can be working on ourselves constantly. Some of you are doing it in your sleep, so you can do it while you work too.
Subhadra has a point. It seems like those basic points and questions about human existence have been drowned out by society and media, so that it takes a lot of advancement of consciousness just to get the point of clarity, to be able to even wonder about those things and ask questions about how those questions in the slides.
Yeah, it kind of seems like that, but it always seems here in Burlingame like it's going to be a cloudy day all day, which I don't mind. I mean, the cool weather is rather preserving, in my opinion, but it's not good for tomatoes. The clouds then all of a sudden just burn off, and it's like, oh, cloudy, but then the sun breaks through and it's like it's a hot day all of a sudden by 11 o'clock in the morning, not cold. It's a characteristic of the Bay Area and our different microclimates. And it's a characteristic of the power of mantra also in the practice of devotional service, that you may think that the world's an unfavorable place, that my mind is so clouded over. But Agham Dunvanti Kartsneya Nihara Eva Bhaskara. This example is given actually in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the wisdom literature about bhakti. And it says specifically about how clouds are burned off by the sun. They actually are no match. And so you can expect major breakthroughs if just be simple and like, okay, it's the world's overwhelming place. There's so many obstacles, but I'll just do the simple practice, take the medicine, and then you'll break through, and you'll see the sunshine coming through, and then you get enlivened. You want to do it more. That's important. You have to have some breakthroughs for yourself, because then it's not theoretical. It's not some guy on the YouTube or something like that. You just are, you for yourself, it's self-evident that you're tasting something that's uncommon.
Teacher says, I was taught the Om is the sound of universe, and Angela comments on that. I love that, going to start Om right away. The divine order of the universe takes care of me today and every day.
Yeah, actually, it's a prefix to all Vedic mantras. Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Param Sada Pashanti Suryaho Divyo Chakratatam Tavipraso Vipanyavo Jagurabam Saha Simindate Vishnu Yat Paramam Param. That's an ancient Vedic mantra. And like all other Vedic mantras, it starts with Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Param. So you'll hear Om everywhere because it's the gateway mantra. And one of my spiritual teachers, God brothers, once said about Om, he was a very learned scholar, he was saying, the meaning of Om is yes. Whatever you want to achieve in life, spiritually, yes, you can do it now. It's the big yes.
There's another question. Do you use mudras?
Yes. Do you use mudras? I use mudras when I chant. Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, so I was looking up and I remember certain placements of the hands while you're chanting and you're in your sitting position. It awakens the chakras. And I learned that a long time ago. I was looking at something. If you hold your hands like in the crane motion, that means one thing. You hold it in another, that means something else. So I was just curious about it.
Yes, that's a good point. The one of the most powerful and universally known mudras is this. I mean, think about it for a moment. When you see this, it evokes a particular idea. You're asking for some kind of intervention from above. Please help. It's almost like a lightning rod. You're putting up, please send it right down here into my heart. This is a mudra. And then, of course, there's a Jnana mudra. When you put the thumb and index finger together, I use this when I chant. Of course, I have with the right hand, I'm using to chant on my beads, but I hold my fingers like this. It helps me to focus and concentrate because it's sort of a discipline holding my fingers like that when I'm meditating. But the mudras are, there's lots of them and used for different kinds of things. There's only a few. I mean, not that they're necessary, but yes, I use mudras, and there are a few mudras that you can test out. Like next time you do your chanting, you can try it. Put your fingers in the jnana or the knowledge mudra like that. Charles has got it down.
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
why I brought it up, because it seems like it helps me focus more. My hands are, because we always want to do something with our hands. So
Yeah, that's right.
if my hands are doing something, it helps me concentrate on the mind.
Yeah, like hand. Okay, you stay over here. You can do something too. You stay like this. Nice, Gidget. Thanks.
There is a question
Yeah.
on the recording for the past sessions. I just shared the link. It's on YouTube playlist. It's so you can go there and look at the past recordings if you'd like. Sorry, please go ahead.
No, it wasn't me. I was just asking if there was any last points anybody wanted to make. If you had a burning question or a point, you can be the last word. Did you notice anything from the slideshow today had stuck in your mind? I said that a little awkwardly. Did you notice that anything stuck in your mind? Yes, Eka. Eric Eka.
One thing that stuck with me was the analogy you made early on, that the body is like a boat on the ocean of material life, and the teacher is the captain, and the wisdom literatures is like the wind. I really like that image. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it is a powerful image, isn't it? It's kind of helpful to have those thought bridges and to appreciate. And also in that verse, there's a sense of urgency. It says, Labbam sudurlabam idam bahusamba. No, nrideham adyam sulabam sudurlabam. So nri means the human body in Sanskrit. Nrideham means a human body. So you've got that. Nrideham labam sulabam sudurlabam means rare. It's a very rare thing that you get. So then Pavam sukalpam guru karanadaram. So notice that it's meant for something, to go across the ocean. Captain means somebody who's been across a bunch of times, and he or she can say, like, yeah, red skies at night, sailors delight. Red skies in the morning, sailors take warning. Everyone else thinks, hey, red skies in the morning, great. And it's like, no, not great. Yeah, thank you for remembering that. Well, everybody, we've gathered yet again, and if you consider it in the time chart we put forward, it's significant to use a whole hour to come together to discuss spiritual topics. And I'm deeply grateful that you take your time to come here and give your attention. I really am. And look forward to seeing you again on the next go round. So, I really got in. Yes, was somebody going to say something?
I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you back, Gidget. You bring so much positive energy to every session. It's really great having you here. Everybody, let's do 3 Nitai Gaurangas before we leave. That's a very powerful mantra that wakes up compassion within the heart. So Charles has his mudra going, and I'll say it, and you can say it along with me. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Okay, some homework. As soon as we get off, sit with yourself, say self, we're going to do some mantras and do 10 more Nitai Gaurangas. Everyone who's going to do it, put up a thumbs up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. And then somebody try to remember to report back next week about how it went. Okay. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in 7 more precious days. Please keep the transcendental vibration going. Haribo.
Haribo.
Haribo.